47 cadets had already failed. The arena floor was covered in deep claw marks and scattered sand. Medical teams had carried away 3 injured Drokai warriors in the past hour alone. The massive creature in the center of the training ground stood like a mountain of muscle and armor, its 6 legs planted wide, its armored head swinging left and right as it searched for its next challenger. The Vaughn were legendary across the galaxy. Standing 12 feet tall at the shoulder, covered in natural bone plating, and possessing enough strength to tear through starship hulls, they had served as the Federation's ultimate ground forces for over 2,000 years. But they could not be tamed by technology. They chose their riders through some ancient instinct that no scientist had ever explained. This particular Vaughn was called Thundermaw by the handlers. He had rejected every cadet presented to him across 3 selection cycles. 6 years of failed bondings. 6 years of rage. Danny Webb watched from the back of the cadet formation. At 22 years old, he was the youngest member of this year's cohort. He was also the only human. Humanity had earned Federation membership just 5 years ago. Most species still considered humans a curiosity. Soft creatures from a mid-level death world. No natural weapons. No armor. No venom. Just a strange persistence and an unsettling habit of forming bonds with dangerous animals back on their homeworld. Danny had heard the jokes. Monkey boy. Dirt dweller. Meat without claws, but he ignored them. He was too busy watching Thundermaw. Commander Celis stood on the observation platform above the arena. She was Drokai, 8 feet tall, with 4 muscular arms crossed over her chest. Her species had provided the Federation's finest soldiers for millennia. She had personally bonded with 3 Vaughn during her career. She was not impressed with this year's cadets. Next, she called out, her voice flat with disappointment. The Fenari cadet stepped forward. The fox-like alien was quick and confident, his orange fur gleaming under the arena lights. He approached Thundermaw with the traditional posture. Shoulders back, eyes locked, projecting dominance. Thundermaw's response was immediate. The Vaughn lunged forward with shocking speed for something so massive. His roar shook dust from the ceiling 30 feet above. The Fenari cadet was fast, but not fast enough. Thundermaw's armored head caught him in the chest and sent him flying across the arena. Medical teams rushed in. The Fenari would survive, but his pride might not. Danny continued watching. He noticed something that apparently no one else did. Thundermaw favored his left foreleg. Every time he charged, every time he turned, there was a slight hesitation. A fraction of a second where he shifted weight away from that leg. The movement was tiny, hidden beneath tons of muscle and bone armor, but it was there. Human, Commander Celis called out. You are the last remaining cadet. Approach. The arena fell silent. Every species present turned to watch. The soft human, the creature with no claws, no fangs, no armor, walking toward the beast that had broken Drokai warriors like toys. Danny walked to the center of the arena. Thundermaw turned to face him, those ancient eyes burning with fury and something else. Something that looked almost like exhaustion. Danny did not take the traditional posture. He did not square his shoulders or lock eyes in challenge. Instead, he sat down in the sand. Confused murmurs rippled through the watching crowd. Commander Celis leaned forward, her expression shifting from boredom to curiosity. Thundermaw did not charge. He stood there, staring at this strange small creature that had done something no cadet had ever done before. Refused to play the game. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 20. The crowd grew restless. Some cadets laughed. Others called for the human to be removed. But Danny just sat there, watching the Vaughn with quiet patience. He thought about his mother's ranch in Montana, about the wolves they had rehabilitated, about the grizzly bear that had wandered onto their property half dead from a hunter's bullet. Frightened animals attacked because they expected attack. The only way to break that cycle was to become something that did not threaten. Thundermaw began to circle him. Those massive legs, each one thick as tree trunks, moved slowly around Danny's seated form. The Vorn's breath came hot and heavy, washing over Danny like wind from a furnace. Danny began to hum softly. An old song his mother used to sing when working with traumatized animals. Thundermaw stopped. The great beast lowered his massive head, bringing those burning eyes level with Danny's face. They stared at each other for a long moment. Two creatures from different worlds, both carrying wounds that others could not see. Then Thundermaw did something he had never done before. He pressed his forehead gently against Danny's chest, the bonding gesture. The arena erupted into chaos. Cadets shouted in disbelief. Commander Celis stood frozen on her platform, all four arms falling to her sides. Danny raised one hand and placed it softly against Thundermaw's armored jaw. "I see you," he whispered. "I see you." An old handler named Priest pushed through the crowd after the ceremony ended. His gray fur was thin with age, and his movements were slow and careful. He approached Danny where he stood beside his new bond partner. "You saw it," Priest said quietly. "What we have missed for 6 years." Danny looked at Thundermaw's left foreleg. "He's not aggressive. He's in pain." Priest nodded slowly. "The question now, young human, is what you intend to do about it." The beast's stables smelled of iron and old straw. Thundermaw lay on his side in the largest holding pen, his massive chest rising and falling with each breath. Danny sat beside him, running his hands along the armored plates of the Vaughn shoulder. Priest stood at the pen entrance, holding a portable medical scanner. His old hand shook slightly as he read the results. "Bone fragments," Priest said. 6 pieces lodged near the joint. They have been there for years. Every movement, every charge, every step causes grinding against the nerve clusters. Danny felt something cold settle in his chest. How did no one notice? Vaughn are captured from the wild. They are broken through dominance training. Pain is expected. Pain is part of the process. Priest lowered the scanner. No one thought to ask if this pain was different. Thundermaw shifted slightly, and Danny felt the creature's breath wash over him. 6 years. This magnificent being had spent 6 years in constant agony, lashing out at everyone who approached because he expected only more suffering. Danny thought about the wolves back home, the ones that had been trapped for days before rescue teams found them. The bears shot by poachers and left to die. His mother had taught him that trauma lived in the body long after the original wound healed. "We need to operate," Danny said. "Remove the fragments." Priest's expression was sad, but unsurprised. "The Academy veterinary staff will refuse. Vaughn are military assets. The cost of surgery, the recovery time, the risk of losing the animal entirely during the procedure. They will not approve it. Then I will do it myself." Priest stared at him for a long moment. "You're a first-year cadet. You have no medical training. You have no authority." "I have hands," Danny said, "and I will not let him suffer." Over the following weeks, Danny began his secret mission. He studied Vaughn anatomy using old research files that Priest provided. He practiced surgical techniques on training dummies borrowed from the medical wing. He stole supplies in small amounts, items that would not be missed immediately. Antiseptique solution, surgical thread, pain medication. Every night, he visited Thundermaw in the stables. He cleaned the wound area. He administered what little pain relief he could manage. He talked to the great beast in soft tones, telling him about Earth and Montana and the animals who had learned to trust his family. Thundermaw began to change. The rage faded from his eyes. He no longer roared when handlers approached. Instead, he would watch them with wary curiosity, his massive head turning to track their movements without the violent tension that had defined him for years. A Fenari cadet named Nira noticed. She was the one whose bond partner had been killed in a training accident 2 months before Danny arrived. She had been paired with a different Vaughn now, a smaller female, but the loss still haunted her. She had dismissed Danny initially. Soft-worlder, weak creature playing at being a soldier, but she had watched him sit in that arena. She had watched Thundermaw bow to him. "What are you doing to that beast?" she demanded one evening, catching Danny leaving the stables. Danny considered lying. Nira could report him and end everything. But there was something in her golden eyes that made him hesitate. Curiosity, yes, but also pain that she carried like a weight on her shoulders. Healing him, Danny said simply. He told her everything. The bone fragments. the years of unrecognized suffering, the secret surgery he was planning. Nira listened without interruption, her triangular ears flattening against her skull. "This is madness," she said when he finished. "If they catch you, they will expel you. Maybe worse." "Probably," Danny agreed. "Why risk it? He is just a beast." Danny shook his head. "He trusted me. In that arena, with every reason to attack, he trusted me instead. I will not betray that." Nira was silent for a long time. Then she asked, "Do you need help?" The surgery happened 3 nights later. Priest kept watch at the stable entrance. Nira assisted with the tools. Danny worked for 4 hours, his hands steady despite the terror that clawed at his heart. The fragments came out one by one, each one a small piece of metal that should have been removed years ago. Thundermaw woke slowly the next morning. He moved his left foreleg experimentally. Then again, no grinding. No lightning bolt of agony shooting through his shoulder. He turned his great head toward Danny, who sat exhausted against the pen wall, covered in blood and disinfectant. And for the first time in 6 years, Thundermaw made a sound that was not a roar. It was almost like a purr. The relief lasted 3 days. Commander Celis arrived at the stables with 4 security officers. Someone had reported unusual activity. The missing supplies had been noticed. The investigation had begun. She found Danny brushing Thundermaw's armored plates, humming softly as he worked. "Cadet Webb," she said, her voice like ice. "You have been interfering with military assets." Danny stood, but did not move away from Thundermaw. "I have been treating a medical condition that your staff ignored for 6 years." Celis stepped forward, all 4 hands clenching into fists. "You performed unauthorized surgery on Federation property." Thundermaw rose, all 12 feet of him. He stepped over Danny and placed himself between the human and the commander. His eyes were no longer filled with rage, but his message was clear: touch him and find out what I can do when I am not crippled by pain. Celis stopped. Even she, veteran of 100 battles, knew better than to challenge a healthy Vaughn protecting his bonded partner. "You have made this beast useless for anyone else," she said finally. "If you fail the combat trials, he will be terminated. That is the law." She turned and walked away. Danny placed his hand against Thundermaw's leg. "Then I will not fail." Training began before dawn on the day Danny's life changed forever. The combat trials were divided into 3 phases. Obstacle courses designed to test coordination between Ryder and Vaughn. Tactical exercises that required split-second decisions. And finally, simulated battle against drone swarms programmed to exploit every weakness. Danny watched the other bonded pairs during morning warm-ups. The traditional method was clear. Riders used neural links that sent pain signals directly into their Vaughn's nervous system. Turn left. Schalt. Turn right. Schalt. Stop. Schalt. Go. Shock. The beasts obeyed, but their eyes were empty. Broken spirits inside armored shells. "You need to use the compliance collar," Nira told him during lunch break. Her own Vaughn, a female called Stormwind, wore the device around her thick neck. Without it, you cannot control him during complex maneuvers. Danny looked across the training yard to where Thundermaw stood waiting. The great beast had gained weight since the surgery. His movements were smooth and powerful now, no longer hindered by hidden agony. He was beautiful in a terrifying way. "I will not hurt him to make him obey," Danny said. "Then you will fail," Nira replied, "and he will die." Danny spent that night in the stables, sitting with Thundermaw in the darkness. He thought about his mother's words when he was just a boy, struggling to train his first horse. Force creates obedience. Trust creates partnership. He began experimenting. He learned that Thundermaw responded to specific touches. Pressure on the left shoulder meant turn left. Pressure on the right meant turn right. A tap on the neck meant stop. 2 taps meant go. Weight shifts in the saddle communicated speed changes. But more than that, Danny learned that Thundermaw understood language. Not just tone, but actual words. "Down," Danny would say, and Thundermaw would lower himself. "Watch left," and those ancient eyes would scan the left horizon. "Trust me," and the great beast would follow Danny into situations that every instinct should have rejected. The other cadets laughed at first. the human whispering to his beast like a child talking to a pet. But their laughter faded as they watched Danny and Thundermaw move through the obstacle courses and no pain signals. No complainskoya. Just two beings working together. They were fast. They were precise. They were something that the Academy had never seen before. Priest found Danny one evening, polishing Thundermaw's armor after a particularly successful training session. I must tell you something, the old handler said. Something that will change how you see everything. He led Danny to his small quarters in the handler dormitory. On his desk sat dozens of data pads, years of notes, photographs, and recordings. I'm not just a handler, Priest said. I am a Federation welfare inspector. I was placed here 8 years ago to investigate reports of Vaughn mistreatment. Danny felt his heart rate increase. And what did you find? Evidence. Overwhelming evidence. Vaughn are not beasts. They are sapient beings. They have language. They have culture. They have families in the wild that they are torn away from during capture. They have memories and emotions and the capacity for complex thought. Priest pulled up a recording. It showed two wild Vaughn on their home world, heads together, making low rumbling sounds that changed in pitch and rhythm. They are talking, Priest said, discussing the movement of prey animals in their territory. We decoded fragments of their language 3 years ago. Danny felt sick. You have proof that the Federation has been enslaving a sapient species. Why has nothing changed? Priest's face was heavy with old grief. Because I could not prove intelligence under combat conditions. Broken Vaughn do not demonstrate sapience. They are too traumatized. I needed a Vaughn who had not been shattered by traditional training. A Vaughn who still had his mind intact. He looked at Danny with something like hope. I needed Thundermaw. I needed you. The weight of it settled on Danny's shoulders. This was bigger than one Vaughn. This was bigger than passing the combat trials. The entire future of a species rested on what happened next. The final trial, Danny said slowly, it is not just about passing. It is about proving that a healthy, unbroken Vaughn can function as a true partner in combat. Yes, Priest said, if Thundermaw demonstrates clear, sapient behavior during the trials, I can finally submit my report. The Federation Council will have to act. Danny returned to the stables that night. Thundermaw was awake, his great eyes reflecting the dim light. Danny climbed into the pen and sat beside his partner. I need to tell you something, Danny said. I do not know how much you understand, but I need to say it anyway. Thundermaw turned his massive head and regarded Danny with patient attention. What happens in the next few days will decide the future of your people. If we succeed, things might change. Your kind might be recognized as equals instead of property. Other Vaughn might be freed. Families might be reunited. Danny's voice cracked slightly. But if we fail, they will kill you. And nothing will change. The suffering will continue for generations. Thundermaw was silent for a long moment. Then he did something that made Danny's breath catch. He nodded. Not a random movement. Not a muscle twitch. A deliberate, understood nod. He knew. He understood. He was choosing to fight anyway. Danny pressed his forehead against Thundermaw's armored snout, the same gesture that had bonded them weeks ago. Together then, Danny whispered, whatever comes. The announcement came the next morning. The final trial had been moved up, but that was not the real news. The simulated battle had been canceled. Raxian raiders had been spotted near the sector. Real enemies, real weapons, real death. The cadets were going to war. Fire bloomed across the eastern corridor of Station Horizon. The Raxian raiders had hit hard and fast, breaching the outer hull in 3 locations before defense systems could respond. They were insectoid creatures, each one standing 7 feet tall on 4 legs, with razor-sharp appendages designed for cutting through metal and flesh with equal ease. Danny had never seen combat before. None of the cadets had. This was supposed to be a training year, a time for learning and preparation. Instead, they were running through smoke-filled hallways toward the sounds of screaming and weapons fire. Thundermaw moved beneath Danny with terrifying grace. The Great Vaughn had become something transformed since the surgery. Where once there had been pain and rage, now there was focused power. His 6 legs ate up the distance in massive strides, his armored body crashing through debris that would have stopped any vehicle. Around them, other bonded pairs struggled. The compliance collars were failing under stress. Vaughn that had been broken by pain training were freezing, their traumatized minds unable to process the chaos of real combat. Riders screamed commands and sent shock after shock through the neural links, but their mounts simply stood trembling, refusing to move. "Left corridor," Danny shouted, and Thundermaw turned without hesitation. No pain signal, no force compliance, just trust. They burst into a cargo bay where a squad of Raxians had cornered a group of station civilians. Children were crying. Adults were trying to shield them with their bodies. The Raxians clicked their mandibles in hungry anticipation. Danny did not give orders. He simply thought about what needed to happen, and somehow Thundermaw understood. The Vaughn charged. Not blindly, not with mindless aggression, but with calculated precision. He hit the first Raxian from the side, using his armored head to crush the creature against the wall. His tail swept left and knocked two more off their feet. His jaws closed around a fourth and ended its existence in a single bite. Danny fired his sidearm at the remaining raiders, covering Thundermaw's exposed flanks. They moved together like they had been doing this for years instead of weeks. A dance of violence that was somehow also beautiful. The last Raxian fell. The civilians stared at Danny and Thundermaw with expressions of terrified gratitude. "Get to the central shelter," Danny said. "Go now." They ran. Danny and Thundermaw turned back toward the fighting. The next 3 hours were a nightmare that Danny would remember for the rest of his life. Corridor by corridor, they fought their way through the station. They rescued trapped personnel. They held choke points against waves of raiders. They did things that should have been impossible for a first-year cadet and his newly bonded partner. And they were not alone. Nira found them near the medical wing. Her Vaughn, Stormwind, moved with the same frozen hesitation that plagued the other compliance-trained beasts. Blood covered Nira's shoulder where a Raxian blade had found its mark. "Stormwind will not move," Nira gasped. "She is too afraid. I cannot make her understand." A Raxian hunting party was closing in behind them. Danny made a decision in half a second. "Climb up," he said, reaching down his hand. Nira grabbed it and pulled herself onto Thundermaw's back, settling behind Danny. Stormwind stood paralyzed, her eyes wide with terror. Thundermaw turned to the smaller female, Vaughn, and made a sound. Low and rumbling, filled with complex patterns that Danny could not interpret but somehow understood. A reassurance, a command, a promise. Stormwind blinked. Then she moved, following Thundermaw as he charged toward the approaching raiders. The Raxians never stood a chance. That be why the time Danny's group reached the main defense line, something extraordinary had happened. 7 other Vaughn had joined them, not because their riders had commanded it, but because Thundermaw had called them. His rumbling communication had cut through their trauma, reached whatever part of their minds still remembered what it meant to be free. They fought as a pack. Coordinated, strategic, communicating in ways that their riders could not understand but could clearly see. Commander Sella stood at the defense line, her 4 arms working frantically to coordinate the station's response. She watched Danny and Thundermaw lead the Vaughn charge that finally broke the Raxian assault. She watched beasts that should have been mindless weapons making tactical decisions, protecting each other's flanks, calling out warnings in their ancient language. The last raider fell as dawn cycle lights flickered back to life across the station. Danny slid off Thundermaw's back, his legs nearly giving out beneath him. He was covered in blood, most of it not his own. His hands shook so badly he could barely holster his weapon. Nira landed beside him, clutching her wounded shoulder. "That was impossible," she said. "What Thundermaw did, rallying the others, coordinating the attack, that was not beast behavior." "No," Danny agreed quietly. "It was not." Commander Celis approached them. Her uniform was torn. One of her arms hung limp at her side, broken during the fighting. She stared at Thundermaw with an expression that Danny had never seen on her face before. Uncertainty. "The station logs recorded everything," she said slowly. "Every communication between the Vaughn during the battle. Every tactical decision they made independently. Every moment of coordinated sapient behavior." She looked at Danny. The Federation Council will demand answers. What you have done here, human, what you have proven, it changes everything. Behind her, Thundermaw stood watching. The other Vaughn had gathered around him, their great heads bowed in what looked almost like respect, like recognition of leadership earned through courage rather than pain. Danny understood then that the real battle was just beginning. The Federation Council chamber was designed to intimidate. 12 species sat in judgment, their representatives arranged in a semicircle of floating platforms that rose like steps toward the domed ceiling. Holographic displays showed the faces of billions of citizens watching from across the galaxy. This was the highest court of power in known space, where the fate of worlds was decided with a word. Danny stood at the center of the chamber, feeling very small and very human. Thundermaw waited outside, too large to fit through the ceremonial doors, but Danny could feel his presence like warmth against his back. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Horizon Station. 3 months of investigations, interviews, and growing controversy. Priest's evidence had been submitted. The battle recordings had been analyzed by experts from a dozen worlds. The truth could no longer be hidden. The Vaughn were sapient, had always been sapient. For 2,000 years, the Federation had built its military power on the enslavement of intelligent beings. Counselor Vrex, a Drokai elder whose scales had faded to gray with centuries of age, spoke first. Let us be clear about what is being proposed. The human cadet suggests that we release all Vaughn from military service, that we end a practice that has protected Federation citizens for 2 millennia. I suggest that we stop committing a moral crime that we never knew we were committing, Danny replied. His voice was steady despite the terror that churned in his stomach. The Vaughn have families. They have language. They have culture. We have been tearing children from their parents and breaking their minds to make them into weapons. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some hostile, some thoughtful, some simply confused by a human daring to speak so directly to the council that a Fenari counselor leaned forward. And what would you have us do? The Vaughn are integrated into every defensive structure we possess. Without them, our borders become vulnerable. Billions of lives depend on our military strength. Danny had prepared for this question. I propose a third option. Not slavery and not abandonment. Partnership. He activated the display built into his wrist unit. Holographic images appeared in the air around him, showing Earth animals working alongside humans throughout history. My species has spent 10,000 years forming bonds with other creatures. Dogs that guard our homes, horses that carry us into battle, elephants that work beside us, dolphins that help us fish. We did not break these animals. We learned to communicate with them. We earned their trust. They chose to work with us because the partnership benefited us both. The images shifted to show Thundermaw and Danny during the battle, fighting together, protecting each other, communicating without paying collars or neural links. This is what is possible with the Vaughn, Danny continued. Not forced obedience through torture, but genuine alliance between equals. They are warriors by nature. They do not need to be forced to fight. They need to be given a reason to fight. Something worth protecting. Counselor Vrex raised one scaled hand. And you believe humans can teach this? A species that has been part of the Federation for barely 5 years. I believe humans are uniquely qualified, Danny said. We have more experience forming cross-species bonds than any civilization in the galaxy. It is literally in our blood. My great-grandmother rode horses in competition. My grandmother trained search and rescue dogs. My mother rehabilitates wolves. This is what we do. This is who we are. The debate continued for hours. Some counselors argued for maintaining the current system. Others demanded immediate release of all Vaughn. The middle ground that Danny proposed seemed too risky to some, too compromising to others. Then Commander Celis requested permission to speak. She rose from her platform, her 4 arms still showing the healing scars from the battle. She had led the defense of Horizon Station. She had watched her cadets die. She had seen everything. I have bonded with 3 Vaughn in my career, Celis said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. I believed I understood them. I believed the compliance system was necessary. I believed they were beasts that needed to be controlled for their own good and for ours. She paused, her ancient eyes finding Danny in the crowd below. I was wrong. The chamber stirred. A Drokai commander admitting error was almost unheard of. During the battle, I was injured and trapped beneath debris in the medical wing. A Vaughn found me, not my bonded partner, who had been killed in the initial assault. A stranger, one of the beasts that Thundermaw had rallied during the fighting. Her voice grew soft. He could have left me. I was not his rider. I had no compliance collar to force his obedience. But he stayed. He protected me from raiders until rescue teams arrived. And when I looked into his eyes, I saw something I had never allowed myself to see before. She straightened, her voice gaining strength. I saw a person, looking back at me, choosing to help me, not because he was forced, because he understood that I needed him. Celis turned to face the full council. I support the humans' proposal, not because it is politically convenient, not because it preserves our military strength, but because it is right, because we have been committing an atrocity in ignorance, and now that we know, we must change. The vote came at sunset.by margin of 7-5. The Federation Council approved the establishment of a trial program. Human trainers would be brought in to develop new methods of Vaughn partnership. The compliance systems would be phased out. And for the first time in 2,000 years, Vaughn would be given the choice to serve or to return to their homeworld. Danny walked out of the chamber on shaking legs. Nero was waiting for him, along with Priest and a dozen others who had supported his testimony. But the only welcome that mattered was waiting beyond them. Thundermaw stood in the plaza outside the council building. When he saw Danny emerge, he lowered his great head and made that rumbling purr that had replaced his roars of pain. Danny pressed his forehead against his partner's snout, just as he had done on the day they first bonded. "We did it," he whispered. "We did it." 1 year later, the new training facility stood on a moon orbiting the Vaughn homeworld. The structure was unlike any military installation in Federation history. No gaiis, no compliance equipment, no pain-based training tools. Instead, there were open fields where Vaughn could run freely, sheltered areas where they could rest without chains, communication rooms where human trainers studied the growing dictionary of Vaughn language. Danny stood at the edge of the main training ground, watching the morning session begin. 30 human instructors worked with 60 Vaughn across the facility. Some pairs were practicing combat maneuvers. Others were building the foundation of trust that made everything else possible. Thundermaw lay beside Danny, his massive head resting on his forelegs. He had become something of a legend among both species. The Vaughn who remembered his freedom. The warrior who had chosen to fight alongside a human instead of against him. Nira approached from the administration building, her orange for catching the sunlight. She had transferred to the program 6 months ago, leaving her military career behind to help build something new. Her bond with Stormwind had transformed after she abandoned the compliance collar. The two had become partners in truth rather than in name. The transport ship arrived, Nira said. 3 new Vaughn from the release program. 2 adults and 1 young one. Danny nodded. The release program had been the hardest part of the council's decision. Vaughn who wished to return to their homeworld were given that choice. Many had gone. Many more had chosen to stay, their bonds with their human partners too strong to break. But some Vaughn arrived at the facility who had never been captured. Wild ones who came by choice, curious about the humans who had changed everything for their species. Danny and Thundermaw walked together toward the arrival area. The facility staff had learned that new Vaughn responded best when greeted by one of their own rather than by the small pink creatures who ran the place. The 3 newcomers stood in the reception field. The 2 adults were large and scarred, clearly survivors of many seasons on their harsh homeworld. They watched the approaching humans with wary suspicion, but the young one drew Danny's attention. Barely 6 feet tall at the shoulder, still carrying the soft features of youth, the young Vaughn trembled with fear. Her eyes darted everywhere, searching for threats, expecting pain. Danny understood. Somewhere in her short life, this young one had learned that the galaxy was a dangerous place. Perhaps she had lost her parents to capture teams. Perhaps she had witnessed violence that no child should see. Whatever the cause, she carried trauma in her body like a weight that he thought about his mother's words, spoken so many years ago in the rehabilitation center in Montana. Frightened animals attack because they expect attack. The only way to break that cycle is to become something that does not threaten. Danny sat down in the grass. The facility staff exchanged confused glances. The two adult Vaughn tilted their heads, surprised by this behavior. Even Nira raised an eyebrow. But Thundermaw understood immediately. He settled down beside Danny, his massive body creating a wall of warm safety on one side. He began to purr, that deep, rumbling sound that had replaced his roars of pain, filling the air with something that sounded almost like a lullaby. The young Vaughn watched them. Her trembling slowed. Her wild eyes focused on this strange scene. Two creatures, one enormous and one tiny, sitting together in the grass without any sign of threat or demand. Minutes passed. The sun moved across the sky. The two adult Vaughn began to relax, their suspicion fading as they realized nothing bad was going to happen. The young one took a step forward. Then another. Then another. She stopped a few feet from Danny, her head lowered, her young eyes filled with confusion and the smallest flicker of hope. Danny did not move. He did not reach out. He simply sat there, present and patient, offering nothing but the promise of safety. The young Vaughn made a sound, small and uncertain, a question in her ancient language. Thundermaw answered with a rumble that Danny could almost translate after a year of study. Something like, safe. Friend. No pain here. The young one considered this. Then, slowly, carefully, she lay down in the grass a few feet away from Danny. Not touching, not trusting completely, but no longer running. It was a beginning. Danny thought about everything that had brought him to this moment. A training exercise that became a real battle. A beast in pain that everyone had given up on. A choice to see a person where others saw only a weapon. Humanity had given many gifts to the galaxy since joining the Federation. Technology and art and new ways of thinking. But perhaps the greatest gift was the oldest one. The ability to see another being, no matter how different, and choose to understand instead of control. Nira settled down in the grass beside Danny. The two adult Vaughn approached cautiously and laid down near Thundermaw, drawn by his calm presence. They sat together as the sun set over the Vaughn homeworld. Human and alien, giant and small. Once enemies, now family. How long will this take? Nira asked quietly, watching the young Vaughn. To help her trust again? Danny smiled and leaned back against Thundermaw's warm side. As long as it takes, he said. We have all the time in the world. The young Vaughn's ears twitched at the sound of his voice. Not afraid, just listening, learning that maybe, just maybe, not everyone in the universe wanted to hurt her. It was enough. For now, it was enough. And across the galaxy, on 100 worlds, the first generation of true Vaughn partners stood beside their human friends. Not as slaves and masters, not as weapons and wielders, but as what they had always been meant to be, equals. Allies. Family. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter.